Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to examine one of the most powerful forces in American democracy: public opinion. If political socialization explains how we develop beliefs, public opinion tells us what those beliefs look like when aggregated across millions of citizens. So let's begin simply. Public opinion refers to the collective attitudes, beliefs, and preferences of citizens regarding political issues, institutions, and leaders. In a democracy, public opinion matters because government legitimacy rests on consent, and consent is reflected, directly or indirectly, in what the public believes. But here is the important nuance: public opinion is not always informed, consistent, or stable. Citizens may have strong views about abortion, gun control, immigration, or inflation, but relatively weak or undefined views on regulatory policy, administrative law, or trade mechanisms. And sometimes opinions shift rapidly in response to events. For example, inflation dominated public concern in 2022 and 2023. By 2024, immigration and border security surged in salience. In 2025 and 2026, foreign policy tensions and Supreme Court rulings have increasingly shaped public debate. Public opinion is dynamic. It reacts. Measuring public opinion. So, how do we know what the public thinks? Through polls and surveys. A public opinion poll collects responses from a representative sample to estimate broader population views. You've heard this language before: margin of error, statistically significant, likely voters. These are attempts to scientifically approximate the attitudes of millions using a manageable number of respondents. But measurement is not neutral. Question wording matters. For example, asking, "Do you support reproductive rights?" may yield different results than asking, "Do you support abortion access?" Asking about climate change regulations produces different responses than asking about environmental protections. Order effects matter, timing matters. After major events, opinion often shifts temporarily. After the Supreme Court's 2022 decision in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, public opinion polling showed an increase in voter mobilization around abortion rights. The ruling overturned decades of precedent under Roe v. Wade, and public opinion became sharply polarized. Polling doesn't just measure opinion, it captures reaction. Role of polls in modern politics. Polls influence campaigns, policy strategy, and media coverage. Campaigns use internal polling to refine messaging. For example, in the 2024 presidential election cycle, candidates heavily adjusted language around border policy after polling revealed immigration as a top voter concern. Media outlets regularly report approval ratings of the Supreme Court itself. Following controversial rulings, public trust metrics fluctuate. According to multiple surveys after Dobbs, approval ratings for the court declined significantly among certain demographic groups. Polling can even shape behavior. When voters believe a candidate is leading, they may join the perceived majority, the bandwagon effect. Conversely, some voters rally behind perceived underdogs. Polling shapes perception of momentum, viability, and legitimacy. Media and the shaping of public opinion. Now we must examine media. Media does not just report opinion, it helps construct it. There are three major mechanisms: agenda setting. Media influences what issues we think about. Framing. Media influences how we interpret issues. Priming. Media influences the standards by which we judge leaders. Consider recent Supreme Court cases. When the court decided students for fair admissions versus Harvard, ending race-conscious admissions in higher education, media framing varied dramatically. Some outlets framed it as restoring equal protection. Others framed it as dismantling affirmative action protections. The issue was the same, the interpretation differed. Similarly, the 2023 ruling in 303 Creative LLC versus Alenis involving free speech and LGBTQ+ anti-discrimination law was framed either as a victory for First Amendment protections or as a setback for civil rights protections. Media framing influences whether citizens perceive the court as protecting liberty or undermining equality. In the digital era, algorithmic media ecosystems intensify these effects. Individuals often consume news aligned with pre existing beliefs, reinforcing ideological segmentation. Public opinion becomes more polarized not only because of disagreement, but because of informational divergence, public opinion, and policymaking. Now we arrive at the critical question: does public opinion actually influence policy? In high salience issues, yes, often significantly. After Dobbs, several states held ballot initiatives protecting abortion rights, and voters in states like Michigan and Ohio passed constitutional protections reflecting majority opinion within those states. Public opinion directly shaped policy outcomes at the state level. However, on more technical or low salience issues, such as administrative agency authority, public opinion plays a smaller role. For example, in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, the court significantly limited the Chevron deference doctrine, reshaping how courts review federal agency interpretations. This case carries enormous implications for regulatory governance, yet it received relatively limited sustained public attention compared to abortion or affirmative action rulings. Here, we see a pattern. On visible moral issues, public opinion strongly pressures lawmakers. On complex structural issues, elites and institutions often operate with greater autonomy. Additionally, public opinion is often broad rather than specific. Citizens may support border security, but disagree about enforcement mechanisms. They may support climate action, but disagree about carbon taxes versus regulation. Policymakers interpret these broad signals strategically. A tension in democracy. There is a deeper tension here. Democracy requires responsiveness to public opinion, but governance requires expertise, institutional stability, and constitutional constraint. The Supreme Court, for example, is not designed to directly mirror public opinion. Its legitimacy rests on constitutional interpretation, not popularity. Yet, when public approval drops significantly, debates about judicial reform intensify, including proposals about term limits or court expansion. Public opinion indirectly shapes institutional reform debates. Final reflection. Public opinion is both reactive and formative. It reacts to Supreme Court rulings, economic crises, and political leadership. But it is also shaped by media framing, political messaging, and institutional narratives. In democratic systems, public opinion is never static. It can legitimize authority, it can constrain policymakers, it can mobilize reform, and it can deepen polarization. Understanding public opinion requires understanding measurement, media, institutions, and constitutional structure. In the end, democracy is not only about voting, it is about how collective beliefs shape and are shaped by power. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next lecture.